Welcome to the TA Disruptors podcast. I'm Robert Newry, CEO and co-founder of Arctic Shores. And I have the honour and privilege of being able to talk to some of the leading thought leaders and practitioners in the world of talent acquisition as part of this podcast. And in a time when things are changing so fast in the world of talent acquisition because of things like Gen AI, those talent acquisition leaders who thrive and survive will be the ones who adapt the fastest. And to help you in understanding how you deal with some of those challenges, I am bringing to you a number of podcasts. And today I'm very excited to be welcoming Dominic Joyce, who is head of talent acquisition at Travelex, but also a significant LinkedIn voice, I think a top voice in LinkedIn for last year. And I heard over 8 million views across the whole of 2023 for your various bits of content, which is something that I could only dream about in a lifetime, let alone in a year. But clearly you are somebody who thinks about this world of talent acquisition a lot, and people like to engage with the way that you think about it and challenge people a bit on it. And one of the things that I'll call upon today, which I think is part of what you bring to the world of talent acquisition, is the huge experience that you've had in this space over 10 years in the talent acquisition field, mostly in financial services. But I read at one point that you have reviewed over 100,000 CVs. Again, probably something only in a lifetime could I ever dream about. But also, I know that you've not just looked at CVs, but you've also actually helped people in how they can improve their CVs and what makes a good CV to help somebody get a job. So with that in mind, Dom, I'm really excited to have you here and welcome to the TA Disruptors podcast.
Thank you for having me. That was an intro and a half. I'm flattered, slightly blushing as well. Yeah, I've done a lot, haven't I, in 10 years? Done quite a lot. So
You certainly have.
Yeah, it's surreal when you sort of sit back and then look at what you've done and people you've helped, the views you've collated, and yeah. But no, thank you for having me. I remember meeting you a few years back at an event, and
yes,
we're here today finally.
We are, and we both share in a passion to change the way things get done. And I think we connected when we first met on that we do need to change the status quo, and there's a lot of things that we do and have done in talent acquisition that we take for granted, but perhaps we should challenge ourselves a bit more about that. So let's start off on that point about 100,000 CVs, because I just think that is mind-blowing in terms of a number, but the amount of time you've been staring at white bits of paper and trying to understand who's good, who's not good, should you take them forward, are they a fit or not a fit? Let's maybe break down what the CV actually does for us in terms of its purpose. And a bit of it is it's a bit of data about the person and whether that bit of data matches to what we're looking for. And in the world that we're living in now, which is much more adaptive and fast-paced than it was for particularly anything to do in a knowledge-based role, then the data that we need on somebody to then decide in that 10 seconds or whatever it might be, hopefully a bit longer than that, because I think that most candidates feel that if they put in hours worth of effort into an application, that 10 seconds for that to be considered as to whether they're, which is the reality of where we are now, is not fair to any party on this. So we have to think then, well, what is it that we want to measure around all this? What is that piece of data and sets of data that enable us to make that decision? Is this person going to be a good fit for this role. And I think that's what we need to be challenging ourselves a bit on, and then saying, okay, some of it will be a bit of what they've done in the past, which might be sector specific, it might not be. We could get that from LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. The other could be that we need to get some data on their cognitive ability, how quick do they learn. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the things that I think that we've got to understand a bit more, is somebody's intelligence in a role is not just, do they have A levels, are they good at maths, are they good at writing things, because actually there's really good tools that do that for us. Mm-hmm. It could be how quickly, how creative are they in their problem solving. And we know from examples like the intelligence services, the people who are dyslexic or dyspraxic have very powerful and creative problem solving skills that are different from neurotypical people, that is incredibly useful in those roles. So you said you're not sort of quite sure if you experimented at all with alternatives to the CV, or you've just not seen today anything that meets that requirement, which is a piece of data that you think is reliable and helps you decide, do you bring them forward to an interview or not?
I think you can look at being more open and expansive on perhaps early careers.
Yep.
Because a lot of that is almost fresh out of university, college, school, and in reality, I've written 600 CVs, and the hardest ones to write are the school leavers, because what do you write for them? They just maybe worked in Costa or Greggs or
yes.
River Islands, and it's like, what you can obviously make it functional and relate their skills. And that's the common trait, right? Is you can't really write it based on jobs they haven't had them.
Yes.
So it's like, well, what functional skills can you bring to a company? So early careers, 100%, I think hiring for a CV is a little bit counterproductive, because all you're going on is based on their demographic, where they're from,
yes,
or where they live in, what school they went to, the university, which again could breed its own bias, right?
Totally.
So the idea from, I guess, and what we're doing now at TravelX is to, in our retail environment, is to peel back the need for the CV whilst we're open to it. If you're in the right location for one of our bureaus that you're applying to, we'll test you based on your skills. So we used to kind of go for people in banking, given obviously didn't have currency or travel, whereas I was like, well, let's kind of make it more broader, because we've got a very, very effective L&D department there that train people up. Our managers and so forth train people really well. Let's make it more broader and open the candidate pool, level the playing field. Actually say to like carers have to measure out drugs.
Yes.
They deal with difficult patients. We have, not all the time, but the occasional difficult customer. There's a lot of traits and behaviours there that actually mimic that of a role with us. But because I guess they almost look at a role and think, well, it's different to what I've done now, and then they look at the job titles. They don't actually look beyond that and look at the potential, the skill set or the mindset, when actually that's what's important, right? Is you can bring with you functional skills. And that's where, again, the CV can either be reverse chronological, i.e. most recent job to first job,
yes,
or make it functional. Where you say, here's a brief overview of what I've done.
Yes.
It's probably not pertinent to the role where I've worked, but here's my functional skills: communication, objection handling, problem solving, that actually can make you relatable to the role, going beyond your job title, because you probably wouldn't hire someone in the care sector to work in a bureau based on just looking at job titles and the relation behind it. But break that down and look at, they've had to deal with unsociable hours, difficult patients, customers, measuring out vast amounts of critical currency or medicine. There's a lot of similarities there. So I think to kind of discuss what you could go beyond the CV, don't use the CV but test on skills, and then you set up a robust in-house matrix that you score them on, that's fair, that's just, that everyone, if they come from different backgrounds, they need reasonable adjustments, they're given the time they need. So you make it fair for everyone, and you say, I don't care where you come from.
Yeah.
But also, to your point earlier about, we look at CVs for the here and the now. We look at what you've done up until recently, and we look at what you've done for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. No one really looks or tests for future skills.
That's right.
Or looking into the future and going, right, well, what's their current mindset? What's their growth targets? What can they literally bring to us? Which, you won't get from a CV. You want to look at the person. Is a desire to basically earn and learn and grow and develop, or they're just there to get a paycheck and go home. And the right testing done in that mindset and framework will almost give you that data that you need to make those informed hiring choices.
Oh, I'm totally with you, Dom. And so that's the brilliant thing. I think what you've just articulated so well is why the CV has to change, and our relationship with it has to change. Because as you described earlier, that the way it's curriculum vitae, it is literally just a statement of these are the things that I've done, as opposed to what are the functional things that I've done that could be perfectly suitable for a different sector, but actually turns out to be a similar kind of job task that I'm doing. And I really like your example of the carer measuring out drugs, having to deal with potentially challenging situations when they come up, extended hours, there'll be a resilience in there. Who, if you said, oh, send in your CV to go and apply for a bureau role, they're going to go, well, this is a waste of time, because as opposed to if you said, we're not interested in the CV, have you got these skills, good at measuring things, are you resilient, could you cope with difficult, then the carers go, oh, hang on, that's exactly me. Oh, I get to apply to Travelex. Now that's different, I hadn't thought about that, but that opens up a whole new angle for both the candidate and the employer. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which is it's got to be functional and it's got to be future skills based in there. Those are the two things, and I like those two elements to that. So, but the other thing that you mentioned, and I'd like to just explore a bit more around this, is that okay, so let's agree now that functional and future skills is what we're going to hire for, and we need to figure out a way, but it's not that hard, to enable candidates to present themselves as to how they meet those functional and future skill requirements. What then happens when they join? Because you can hire for potential, get all this right, but if you haven't got a good L&D department and program around that, then surely it all falls apart. So can you share what you've seen that's worked really well, as if you hire for potential, how do you then develop and nurture it in the right way? Because a lot of people do early careers, but if we're doing this for bureau staff, that's not early careers.
No.
So you've got a different requirement there as to how you achieve that.
Correct. I think also the point I made earlier regarding the skill sets, we actually went internally, did a working council. It wasn't TA deciding we're going to hire on these skill sets, like it or lump it. It was right, well, let's hold a working council internally, talk to talent leaders, talk to retail leaders, and say to them, right, what do you deem as being the important skills that will make someone in these roles successful?
Yes.
Multiple choice, right? So we controlled it slightly, but it was a case of, right, like 16 answers, rank your top 3.
Yep.
The most common ones that came back were soft skills, not hard skills.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So the fact that they actually deem things like communication, attention to detail,
yes,
important, well, those traits can be found in most people. That's irrelevant to the job they're in.
Yes.
So then we built the skills off of the actual feedback from internal stakeholders. People worked there for 10, 20 years, people that actually are on the front line and have a say in what's important. Because as TA, we just hire what's on the paper, right? Or what's,
yes. Yeah.
But we were like, let's not go and control this. Let's actually ask people that will work with them day in, day out, the skills they need, the raw talent to make them from good to being great. And to your point there as well, L&D and TA need to work hand in glove.
Yep.
I've always said onboarding starts from the day they apply to the job, the day they see the actual advert. But it's also that handover that kind of often a lot of companies neglect, or they just kind of, it's a real soft, like limp handover.
Yes.
Between TA from offering the job and then starting the business.
Chucking over the wall quite often, isn't it?
Correct. It's and let's face it, in retail recruitment, it's quite a high the attrition rate there.
Yep.
Ours is, I think, half of what it is as a UK average because of the strong L&D function we have there, right, and the onboarding. And part of this new process in place will be we'll measure them on a red, amber, green status. If they're green,
Okay.
we know they're going to be suitable. If they're red, they haven't met the criteria that's everyone scored on. If they're amber, then we'll take a view on it. Do we hire them based on the caveat that we've got to work on these 2 or 3 skills that were perhaps under the threshold? And then let the ND team know, right, we're hiring John Smith. He's coming in as this. As part of the actual testing we did, he displayed below average skills in these areas here. So as part of the induction, let's put more oomph, more emphasis on those skills. So it's quite intense, the training they have there. It's in bureaus, it's obviously in person, bit of classroom-led training. But I think that's the reason why you lose people.
Yes.
It's because you sit there and you promise all these benefits, this job, and it's this utopian environment that you create, which of course as TA you must do, right?
Yeah, an expectation. Yeah.
Exactly. I think what helped our team too as well was my TA team, 1/3 of them came from the bureaus. So again, I'm very big on internal mobility. Again, hire on a skills-based mindset. Could have gone to market and got another recruiter from somewhere else, but I was like, no. They perform high in the bureaus. They perform really, really well. Let's give them the chance. They've already done part of the job in recruitment. So the fact as well that we were transparent, autonomous, and concise with our message about hiring people, we ensured, of course, that when they did come in, they were fully, as a candidate and now an employee, ingrained in the process to actually learn. L&D are obviously fully aware about the brief they're taking on board, not just here's John, good luck, it's here's John, here's their background, here's what they're going to be doing, here's what we're looking to basically grow from them, and also it could be John's got ambitions to in 5 years' time move into a marketing role. Because equally you want someone to come on board and do a good job, right? And I think we've got 5.8 years average tenure where we are.
Yes.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And I think people do move. We've got a lot of boomerangs too. I think it's because you create that environment of, the growth mindset, not just at hiring, but also when they get into the business to upskill, train, empower them as well, right? You want to basically train them that well enough they can leave, but treat them that well they don't want to leave.
Yes.
That's the kind of goal what we're trying to do here.
So so many interesting things in there. I love the red, amber, green bit around that one of the things I always surprises me about talent acquisition is you go through this process of really understanding somebody through a recruitment cycle. And at the end of it, you, in theory, as talent acquisition, have a view of this person's a great fit, shove them in. This person actually is a pretty good fit, but you need to develop them. But very rarely does that scorecard get handed over to the hiring manager, and the expectation almost is, well, the hiring manager must have known that, and therefore it's up to them to go and work that through. Whereas I really like the way that you've formalised that to some extent to say, well, we should have that scorecard, we should red, amber, green it, and then that should form part of how we onboard them. And I like your line of onboarding starts the moment they apply as opposed to the moment that they might turn up at their role. So I think that's a really interesting approach to it. One thing I'd just like to explore a bit further that you mentioned that I also really liked was a lot of people are talking about skills-based hiring now, and you said that's how you're leaning now. And the challenge for many people is, well, how do I decide what skills are needed? Do we go out across the whole organisation now, get everybody to fill in their skills, and then we go and do some big workforce planning piece and look for the gaps of what we're going to need in the future and what we've got now and how we might fill some of it internally and how we might need to get some of it externally? Or the other approach, which you seem to imply that you do, is, well, actually, why don't we just talk to a few hiring managers and say, what is it actually that you need? Work with them on this, and not try and create a huge, big taxonomy of skills for the organisation. Just do it for that role. Is that how you're approaching it, or is this just a pilot, as it were, to see, and actually you have got a bigger plan to go and map out all the skills in Travelex?
Yeah, so it's mainly a pilot in retail because I think you've got to be more careful in other areas of the business. You know, accountancy roles, you kind of want someone that's at least doing like an AAT or has worked in.
You need a qualification.
Yeah, exactly. So I think certain roles you can't perhaps go with the skills-based approach. Potentially you could do alongside qualified candidates, but this is basically a pilot in retail. So I guess test the waters, look at the quality of candidate that comes in, also the diversity of candidate.
Yes.
As in, we'll try and track that as well as to where they're coming from. They're coming from, perhaps the armed forces, they're coming from medical background, just to kind of see the range of people, right? So I think it's a case of, it's something a lot of firms need to do now. Definitely early career talent to understand, of course, what it is they're hiring for.
Yes.
Like you mentioned there, we try to then consult internally rather than going to market or paying a company to go and do research for us, which I'd rather talk to the person who's got the pain point.
Yep.
And be like, what is your pain point now? What is your concerns? What's the skills that you're missing? When you talk to people all day about this, you interview candidates like us all the time for your bureaus. What is it that's missing? Or what are the top qualities you need? You're then hiring based on the requirements of the business owner, right? Not of someone that thinks they know what the answer is. Hence why I wouldn't then feel comfortable going to market and hiring these roles now without consulting, my inner network, because that's where I learn from them.
Yep.
And that's where I'll educate them as well on what the external market's doing. But I need to understand before I go to external market what I'm looking for.
And have you just started this, or have you seen any early results by this more skills first approach to hiring?
Yeah, so it's in its infancy. It's basically going through a building process now. So we spent Q4 doing quite a long process of consulting internally and making sure that it was the right questions, the right skills, right? Because if I'm going to do this, it's got to land well and it's got to do well. And yes, if it lands well and it's a success, it's great, right? Because we make it, a really diverse candidate pool. We make it open to everyone. It's a good news story, right? That's the goal as to what I want to happen. But if I then just shoehorned it out and just made some fabricated questions and, I think, again, that's their first experience of Travelex as a candidate that's new to the process that perhaps wouldn't have applied beforehand.
Yep.
So for me, it's important to make sure that we get the nuts and bolts down. If we're coming out in Q1, we'll do testing in a certain area first to make sure, again, the quality's there, that it's slick. There's no point doing a nationwide rollout and then having to basically firefight problems that turn up.
Yes.
So I think anything that's, the business agrees that that's the way forward for identifying talent. And that's where, for me, getting the buy-in from the business too was great. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't obviously go rogue and go under the radar and go, surprise, this is what we're doing now. The actual benefit that they saw too in it was great. And the support that I've been given has been great to go and make it a reality. Equally as well, there's no real need for a cost aspect to it. You redesign the interview framework and questions there. So I think, it's one of those ones where pilot in retail or your early careers first.
Yeah. Where
you can really monitor also not just the quality of people where they're from, but also their overall experience too, right? Because it's candidate experience. That's a rife for topics on LinkedIn, isn't it? Yeah. People just say, "Oh, applied for a job, never heard back," or was made to do 5 interviews, no feedback. So you candidates are your biggest promoters, right, or detractors, and we get a lot of people that reapply again because, again, of the experience they got as a candidate.
Yeah, no, I think that's such an important part of it is to look at the candidate side of it as well if you're going to make any changes and be clear with them. And just on that note, actually, you mentioned something earlier about transparency, and I think you and I come from the same point on this, that more transparency is good. But it's quite hard to get that right, isn't it? I've seen a lot of debate about salary transparency, for example. So would you be able to kind of share your perspective on that transparency piece, and how do you get that right?
I think we are transparent with salaries in the retail framework, because we literally pay everyone the same salary, based on, so we'll hire people in the bureaus as managers in set locations, depending on footfall, a set price, right? So there's none of this, you've been doing it for, again, the tenure, right? You've got 5 experience, we'll pay this. And that's, I think, where you could put a post out on LinkedIn saying why we don't advertise salaries, and just, again, it's the raw, I guess, paying the people that have to go through apply to jobs, then get told, oh, it's this and it's less, or I get it, I think certain ATS platforms, certain companies make it hard to apply to a job.
Yep.
And don't even disclose salaries. And if you do, by some luck, get a call, you then find that it's 20k below what you're on now, what you're looking for. So I understand the pain points there. Sometimes you can't advertise them because equally people are in similar roles on different money.
Yep.
And if they then saw that what they're on and what's at the market price is 80k,
Yep.
and they're on 60k,
I
think
what you're going to do.
let's face it, right? Human nature, you're going to feel a grief, right?
Of course.
And is it down to managers to say, right, we're going out to market with a role similar to yours, we want someone more senior? Potentially, yes. I think if I ever start a company myself, I would just be up front from day one. Here's what you're all on, here's what I'm on. That way, everyone that came in, everyone knew what everyone was on. That way, there's transparency there. Bigger companies, it doesn't work that way.
You've got a transition, haven't you?
Correct. So, equally as well, I think the problem is people will see a salary and apply to a job. So I think data shows that if you put a job on there for a project manager on 100k, you will get probably, yes, more people that are right for the role based on your requirements, your experience. You'll also get people that have seen 100k.
Yes.
Or want a bit of that.
Yes.
Or people that have come from different backgrounds. So of course, then there, I think, is a mixture of the motivation on that wanting to work for the company and the roles of motivation. And yes, we all work to pay bills and have money to enjoy nice things, right? And the money is a key driver. But then you don't want the main reason that they apply, right, to be the money. I always think that you've got to enjoy where you work and the work that you do and be compensated fairly for it, right? But if you're then going in and you're saying we're paying this, paying that, is their driver the money? Because, again, we want people that are committed for like 2 or 3 or 4 years, right? And think the culture of nowadays, and it's like an old man now, I'm 37, but, 2 or 3 years is seen as a long time now. Like, that's not really in the grand scheme of things, but trying to get someone to stay for that long is difficult, especially when there's money out there to be made.
So where have you ended up on that then? So I get both sides of the story, and I think you've articulated that well. So what have you decided in your sphere of influence now around all of this to actually do? Do you do it for some roles and then not for others? Or?
No, so we just advertise no salaries. We obviously make sure that we benchmark right. So the biggest thing is making sure, of course, that we did no salary. It's not on the adverts, but we know we're paying a market rate or above.
Yes.
Now, the problem you then got then is we're a funny place because we're kind of payments. We're not really banking. We're financial service. We're travel. We're not really. We're not like Google, who's obviously or like Coca-Cola. So it's like, what do we benchmark on?
Yes.
And then you'll put a roll out, and then you'll get someone from Meta, or from
right.
Google or Amazon, who rightfully are on silly money given. And it's like, well, again, a little bit of intelligence tells you they were probably not going to pay what Meta are paying. You then get people, of course, that come from perhaps an NGO environment or other sectors that don't always pay the high salaries. So it's a tough one. So we'd always be transparent in phone calls.
I was going to say, so the answer is no salary in your case on advert, but
Correct.
If they ask, you're immediately...
We talk about it. I think,
straightforward.
Yeah, I think even if someone does a screening call with us, they don't talk money, we talk money, because let's face it, we care about, it's your time, right? It's our time. Recruiters work, it's weird, we work for the employees, the stakeholders, but also the candidate, because it's our goal to get you to a point of offer, right? That's our goal. We're actually rooting for you, right? We want to get you into our company if you're the right fit, obviously based on your skills and your background, but this is why we want to be transparent from the offer and go, right. And again, feedback here, no one's entitled to know what you're on now.
Yes.
That's what your current company deems your services at.
Yep.
But you know yourself what you want. So if I ask you what you want, tell me. And if it's going to work in my budget, I'll tell you.
Yep.
Equally as well, if you won't tell me what you're on, and I'll say, right, it's paying between this and this.
Yep.
Will that work? Yes. Because that way you're invested, because you know that what you want, as one caveat, because you're still finding out if the company's worth your time, and that's what you want. But one pillar is that you know it's going to be paying what you want. Now it's a case of, right, it's paying what I want, but are they ethical? Is the role going to improve and grow me? So I think it's a case of you always have to remain, ironically, transparency, not perhaps externally, but at least with candidates. There's never this cloak and dagger of let's get you through a 4-stage process, a presentation, a bake-off, a duel to the death with the CFO.
Yes.
Then we'll tell you the salary.
Yes.
It's a case of, we'll tell you what it is. That way, again, we know from your side that if you do carry on for the process too, you invest it by one bit, and as you go through the process, the more people you meet, the more you get this perception of a company, the more you feel actually, yeah, do you know what? The money's good, the company's good, the role's good. So it helps create that, I guess, ongoing credibility for us.
Yes. No, I really like that. And I particularly like what you said earlier, and you implied almost that was obvious, which is we in talent acquisition are rooting for you. I'm not sure that has been what most talent acquisition have seen. Well, maybe a bit in talent acquisition, but I think a lot of it has been your point earlier, which is a conduit. We're just processing on this. And certainly from the hiring manager's point of view, they're not rooting. It's like the Spanish Inquisition. It's, right, I'm going to challenge you now, which is another reason why I dislike the CV, because there is so much that people are suspicious about in a CV that the actual interview itself becomes this, well, are you telling me the truth? And it's a bit like the traitors. I've got to go and now find out through a series of questions, are you faithful or not? And that seems completely wrong for me. I really like your mindset around all of this, which is if talent acquisition have done the right job, it means that the people who have been brought forward for interview, you should be able to hire any one of them. And I think if we can get to that mindset on that how do I bring out your potential? How do I learn something from you that means I can get excited as to why I'd like to work with you rather than the next person? Then we deliver a great candidate experience around that as well.
And also as well, to add to that as well, we are there to basically tell your story for you.
Yes.
We are storytellers. And again, it sounds cliche, right? But like, you give us this bit of paper. And I always say to candidates, like, talk to them, I was like, look, you've given me a black and white bit of paper about you. Help me bring your story to life to then go and sell it to my hiring manager. Because equally, if I know you're not right, I'll tell you you're not right based on the call we have, right? I'm not going to sit there and play this whole will he, won't he sort of card.
Yes. But
help me to help you, as in, right, that bit of paper there won't tell me what we need to know full on, right? It's almost like like an appetizer. I'm here to build the main course now and the dessert. And when I send that manager your CV, it's not just, here's John's CV, he wants 80k.
Yes.
He can start in 2 weeks. It's, here's John's CV. His career was very, very weird how it started, but how it came about. But in these companies, projects have scaled this much. He's done this. Fun fact, he's also a qualified scuba diver. So you build this almost like personality behind the bit of paper, right?
Yeah.
And then that's how, and every recruiter say they've also got their own favourite candidate.
Yes.
During the actual, and of course we don't obviously impact that, but we have like a little spidey sense of, I met so and so, he or she or they are a shoe in for the job, and you often get a little bit despondent when they don't get it. You're still happy someone else gets it, right? But
yes.
So a good recruiter will care about getting the right information from the hiring manager, but will also care about building a story on their candidates to get them to the manager. And to be all Cilla Blacky here, it is like Cilla Black style, where it's like, let's match up the contestant with like 1, 2 or 3.
Yes.
That is like what we're trying to do, right? Is we're trying to basically take this utopian candidate employee in your team and almost from a bit of black and white paper, like construct with like clay this ideal person and help them go, here's your desired candidate. And that's what we're trying to do here, right? So yeah, I think a good recruiter will help you bring out your CV or bring out your skills.
Yes.
To hammer home your potential.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that really highlights, what the role of a good recruiter is here, and many different things, but to be more positive about how do I bring that story out. And on that point of storytelling, can you share some of your top tips about things to do and things not to do in LinkedIn and telling your story on LinkedIn as a recruiter, I think, as well. So talent acquisition, I speak to a lot of people who say, oh, I wish, Robert, I could do a bit more on LinkedIn, but I'm a bit nervous about it. And slightly worried that if I put an opinion out there, then how will that reflect on the organisation I work for? How will that reflect on me? Will I get inundated with trolls who are all quite nasty about it? So if you've had nearly 8 million or so views of posts, you've probably been through the good, the bad and the ugly on that. What tips would you give for somebody who's starting to think about, okay, how do I tell a story in LinkedIn in order to improve my positioning in LinkedIn, because that's going to be an important part of how I find other people and learn about their stories?
Yeah, I think people buy people, right? Whilst the companies who they work for, you're often the first person they talk to. As a recruiter, right, you're the ambassador. Often you can attract people through just being yourself and what you talk about and what you share, or you'll just be the first person they talk to based on a CV they've sent to a job, right? I think I always say, type how you talk. So my style's very blunt. That's just what I'm known for. I'll always tell it how it is, warts and all.
Yes.
I love a good analogy, and often relate a lot of dating parallels to career advice. I think find your voice.
Yeah.
Don't get swallowed up in metrics and likes and reposts, right? Equally, I started posting, I joined LinkedIn 12 years ago.
Okay, right from the beginning.
I was a business analyst at Virgin Media many moons ago. And it started during lockdown, posting content about CVs. Now, you as a recruiter see it from the front and the back end, right? How an ATS works.
Yes.
Educate people, empower people, give out free advice. The best thing about being a recruiter, right, is you're sharing. Look, I did a post the other day which got a lot of views. So simplistic. Just rename your CV your name, Dominic Joyce CV, because we get literally ones like, spicy ragu pappardelle. We get ones like IKEA man wardrobes, and it's true. Like, you open it up and it is an IKEA man wardrobe manual, because of the lack of care. But I was like, just literally rename your CV, because I'll download 20 from an application. I've got no idea where you are because your label was CV XYZ, and that was so simplistic.
So the quite often when you're downloading the CV, then you get the email address or the reference point.
Yeah, the file name.
The file name. Oh, I see. They're not even thinking about the file name.
So not even. So literally, it sounds so simplistic. But if you download 20 CVs,
yes,
some will have the names on them. Some will just have numbers, letters, hieroglyphics, gang signs.
Yes,
the most bizarre kind of.
Just make sure that whatever it is, it's something easy to identify you with in your name.
So simplistic, right? And that's the first impression. And that got 200 likes, and I was like, I literally just gave the most simplest bit of advice.
Yes.
So I think also dispel myths that recruiters, candidates don't know about.
Yeah. About
when your CV comes in, what happens to it, because it's not a robot, as we know, it's a recruiter looking at it.
Yeah.
Educate them on what a good CV looks like based on your opinion.
Yes.
Now, recruitment advice, career advice is completely subjective, right? It's not regulated. It's just what I deem as being what works for me, or what's worked for me in the past. So if I give advice, it's based on what worked for my clients.
Yeah. What
worked for the hires that I've been with. So I think recruiters don't want to get posted more on LinkedIn. Just, you will get trolls. You get people that obviously will argue with you as well that the sky isn't blue and the grass isn't green, just to kind of cause an argument. But I think hold, true to your values, be ethical in your approach. Don't blur the lines of things like politics as well, because that's just in religion. I've always said those are two things you don't really go into.
You're a recruiter, so don't steer into
public affairs. Like, talk about what's important to you.
Yes,
educate and empowering job seekers. I post the occasional picture of my daughter as well, my dog, because again, that's also the human side of me.
Personal, right?
Yeah, but I think just also have fun, enjoy it. Don't get wound up in metrics and numbers, because if that's what you're there for, and start posting like selfies of you at the beach topless, or start posting photos of like, if you want to really add value, give away free content, free advice, free support.
Yes,
because as recruiters, we get in our inbox, I get 30 a week. Here's my CV, help me, or what jobs am I good at? I haven't got time, unfortunately, to help you and every person. But if I had a post saying, here's how to not approach a recruiter's inbox, take these notes, that will help them obviously in future. Not just them, the 30 that emailed me, but also the other 300,000 that could look at it.
Yeah, nice idea. So educate, empower, be human, be authentic.
Yeah, educate, empower, encourage.
Encourage. Okay, I like that. 3 E's. and think through what your voice is and be true to yourself of your own voice, and things will just build up on that. But you make a good point, which is as many people who will be looking at anything you post will be potential candidates as it is potential people, peers in the industry.
Yeah.
And so you actually have got a great opportunity to educate people on that and help move things along.
Future employers too as well.
Yes.
I lost my job at Klarna in the layoffs there. Did a post that I was obviously back in the market again after being there for a year. It had 500,000 views.
Wow.
Because of my network that I created from posting free content, free advice, and I always gave out for free.
Yes.
And the one time that I kind of needed something from my network,
they responded.
They delivered.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think just curate your network as well, and just give out as much advice as what you can do and support people. And then that will basically break the narrative that recruiters don't care about anything but making a placement or just ignore you. So
yes.
Yeah, I guess be that 1%.
That's a lovely piece of advice on that, and lovely to hear how the network gave back to you after you gave the network all your sort of support and advice over time too. I suppose then my final kind of bring it back to Gen AI then. How are you using it then? Are you using it to help you write posts or to help write job adverts? What's your take on how you're keeping up to speed on it?
So all my content's written by myself. You can tell in my blunt, brash, weird, bizarre humour and behaviour that's like analogous, right? That my content's all my own that I write. I use Grammarly to spell check it, so I don't use anything generative AI, right?
Yeah.
I think there's apps like Textio and other ones that can basically look at job adverts and remove things like masculine words that are just. You can use Gen AI to kind of formulate perhaps a rejection letter. Mm-hmm. So if you get given from a manager, here's the feedback, and how can I make it less direct and blunt, perhaps, and just basically. So Gen AI will basically help with that, or even just inviting someone for interview. I had a task with my team there. We had to basically construct a rejection letter email, and then put it through Gen AI and just kind of see what they learned from it pre and post. So I think Gen AI obviously will also learn each time, right? It gets information. So I think I've always said Gen AI is basically your co-pilot.
Yeah.
It's there to support you, not to take over your job.
Yeah.
So right now, do we use it in our recruitment functions? No. Could we in future? 100%.
Yeah.
But I think it's a case of if we did it, we'll be doing things that will remove what I call the grunt work.
Yep.
Schedule interviews, rejecting candidates that apply that aren't suitable before interview, because they should always get feedback as personal post-interview. Anything is obviously like marketing emails around applications and building job adverts and this and that. I think whilst you should obviously utilise it to help and support, don't become self-reliant on it and assume that it's okay.
Yeah.
And a prime example of that is right now LinkedIn have launched their own AI tool to basically, if you see a job that you like that I'm applying for, it'll construct an AI message saying, "Hi Dom, I've seen your role in this based on my experience of," and it then inputs automatically your headline.
Right.
Now, if you're just a CEO, that's great. But if you put CEO, I make kick-ass content, then literally it's going to input that whole entire string. Yes. And then it will then pull skills from your profile that don't necessarily match what the requirements are. So again, that's when AI will almost kind of prompt and preempt you and try and obviously guide you. People then just assume it's going to do it for you will come unstuck. Whereas let it support and guide you, but don't let it own you and control you. Yes. That's the kind of advice that I probably give. So I've used it to kind of construct photos, like ChatGPT's function there. Yep. It throws up some really bizarre and warped and obscure pictures. I won't lie to you, Robert. Which again can accompany a post. But I think Gen AI it's coming, it's here. It's just how the companies embrace it, use it, and also control it. And you'll start seeing a lot more jobs now as well in future that are geared towards AI as well, which I think that's a bit of advice too to anyone listening to podcasts. Start learning about AI now. Gen AI, educate yourself, because of, again, about skills based. If someone is going to come to a company that knows about AI or Gen AI, they're almost like valuable. Great advice, Dom. And I really, really like just a practical step that you suggested there for TA teams, which is, right, let's just experiment using it.
objection, how do you respond to an objection email? They get all the time. Right, let's construct it. Let's see what Gen AI or ChatGPT comes up with, compare it, discuss it. I think that's such a good way to think about. We need to learn, we need to discuss, we need to see what's good, what's bad in all of this. But ultimately, I totally agree with you. It's a tool like a calculator. It's to augment what we do as recruiters. And it'd be a very sad day if AI is doing the job of recruiters, because it has to be a human process for humans to result in a human being hired, and we can never lose sight of that. But there's lots of ways that technology and Gen AI can help us do that job better, take some of the grunt work out. Grammarly does one thing on that, but if you want something that's a bit more empathetic or a little bit more friendly, or the person is neurodiverse, so how would you communicate with somebody who is perhaps autistic that you've got an objection to deal with there? And then you've got a tool now that can do that, and I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. Well, Tom, we've come to the end of our session, but it has been a brilliant one, and you've given so many interesting and thoughtful perspectives, whether it be from how people should start thinking about the way that they apply for roles, the functional piece to it, the future skills piece, how do you use Gen AI, how do you introduce skills-based hiring into the organisation. And I hope that we can even get a smidgen of the post views that you normally get. But I know people get a lot of really great insights from this, and thank you for taking the time to share them with us.
No, thank you for having me. Really enjoyed it, and great conversations.